Okay, kia ora koutou, ko Brady Peeti tōku ingoa. Ngāti mani a poto i te iwi, tā te haunui a paparangi i te iwi, no Wanganui a hau. I'm 34 and I go by she, her.
So where did you grow up and how did you come to live in Timaru?
So, like I said, my pepeha, I'm from Wanganui. And there's so many pronunciations of that word, but I grew up with it being called Wanganui, and I proudly say it that way. I grew up there with all my whānau on both sides. I remember a pastime was that as a child I would go to my grandparents' house every weekend just to give mum and dad a break. So it was quite a community of people that would always look after me, and mum always said that I'd just go to anybody. I guess that's just my nature. But all of that eventually stopped at around the age of 8, where mum and dad got jobs elsewhere in Timaru, and so we kind of uprooted and moved down there, away from whānau, away from the community, and yeah, that's how it all began, I guess. Yeah.
And when we were in Timaru, your mom had told us a story about you choosing your primary school.
It was a bit of a culture shock, if I'm being honest with you, going down to Timaru at that particular time. It was interesting because you just never saw any Māori, any Pacifica, anything other than Pākehā back down there. And the only time we would ever see Māori was at the warehouse, so we would actually make it a point to go to the warehouse so that we could be amongst our people and acknowledge that we all are there with each other. Going to school at that particular time, I just remember checking out all the schools all over the place and thinking, okay, every place is nice. But it wasn't until I went to the last school that we checked out, which was called Markwell Primary School, and we were walking through as we did for every other school, and I just happened to see this brown face in the window in the school, and I automatically went, that's where I want to go, because I was like, okay, this is probably where my people might be. And so it was a bit of a culture shock, but when you're so used to the environment that you're living in, you try and make it resemble your old environment as much as possible, and so I guess that's what me and my parents were trying to do.
On with the idea of school, what was school like for you?
I mean, kids are crappy at any phase. No offense to your child if you've got one that's beautiful, but kids can be really crappy. I remember getting bullied a lot. I remember nothing in particular. I just remember being warned that if I ever went onto this grassy patch that somebody would try and tackle me over, and I just remember thinking, how are you going to tackle me over? I'm big. I've always been a big person in my life, and so the idea of that kind of just made me laugh. But I think also at the same time, I didn't get it as hard as a lot of our people do, and that was because of my size and because people didn't really dare to mess with me at all, because not that I ever did fight, and I cannot fight, so that would have been interesting to have fought, but I didn't get it as hard as other people did, and I think also I had a really great group of friends. I didn't at first. They were a little bit racist, those kids, but once I moved into the great friend support that I had, just school became easier. I remember my identity. I used to always think I was gay back then. I used to always think, oh, okay, so my makeup is of a boy, so I should really call myself gay because I like this other boy. When really, in reality, this feminine energy that I held was more potent than just being male. And so, but I didn't figure that out for a very long time. All I just figured was that I'm just a very feminine person that loves men, being a man myself. But next minute, turns out that was not the case.
And when you did figure it out, what was that like for you?
I didn't figure that out for a very long time. I think I was well into my 20s by the time it really hit me that these feelings that I've been feeling have been suppressed for so long, and so to really face it and be honest with it, it was just kind of like a splash of water in my face. It kind of just like, oh, okay, this is what that weird feeling has been, but never understanding it. And that was through being in Auckland, being around trans people, being around my sisters, being around, and being okay with, feeling comfortable and feeling all right with them calling you sis, or hey girl, like that sort of thing. It was just like, oh, why does that just feel so natural and so normal? Things as small as that. And I think also performing arts played a big part into that. My creativity held no gender, and I wanted to explore as much as I possibly could. And so it came out in those sort of ways.
And after you made the realization yourself, you obviously had to tell your family. Have they been supportive of you through this journey?
Oh, absolutely. They've always known I was queer, but I think I officially came out properly so that we could understand each other better maybe 2 years ago at Christmas time. And all they've ever said is that they want me to be safe, and so I hold that with me, and because their opinion of me means more than any other person's opinion, knowing that they love me regardless is something that I hold really dearly to myself, because it means I can live happier and live freer. And so I'm very lucky, and I know that not many people get to experience that, but I do. And if I could share my parents with all the abandoned children out there, abandoned adults out there, I would, but you know.
And going on the idea of gender identity, you spoke about how you feel like you grew up in a generation where you had to suppress your identity.
Yeah.
So did that affect the way you viewed yourself and your gender?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, growing up, you never really saw anyone specifically like me. I guess the closest that I had was, I don't know if anyone remembers, but it had Jackie Clark in it, and Oscar Kitely, and it was this island family, and the mum was this big, beautiful fafa, and that was the closest thing I ever thought to going, oh, that potentially could be me. Her name's Hone, I don't want to, I've forgotten her name, but she's the only one I kind of recognised as, and also on Outrageous Fortune, when she went and played this woman, this trans woman prostitute. Those were the only things I really kind of saw. And even as a child, most of it was just men dressed as women, so like Tu Wong Fu, Priscilla, but those weren't specifically trans people, those were men dressed as women. And so not having the knowledge to understand who I was exactly, it was just easy to suppress, because you're telling yourself, well, there's nothing else like me out there, so why would I even think that way? So I kind of would tell myself, oh, you're a boy, you're fine, don't worry about it. And by telling myself that, I think I disservice myself a lot, because I missed out on a lot of opportunities to be authentic. Yeah.
And when you were in high school, specifically, your parents had a rule that you had to play one sports in order to do the performing arts and the singing. So what was your relationship with sports like?
My relationship with sports was a chore more than something to be passionate about. I think when I lost the passion was when I moved into high school. I used to play mini ball, I used to play touch in primary, and I just really, really loved it. But once it started getting competitive, and also when you move into high school, the gender roles get determined. So boys went with the boys, girls went with the girls. And so I was like, well, if I can't play with my friends, my girlfriends, then I'm not playing at all, because I'm not going in this team that's probably got all these bullies in it. Like, who wants to put themselves through this discomfort? But I did have a rule for the first 2 years of high school, like you said, that I had to play at least one sport. And so I think year 9 I chose hockey, hated it. A ball came rushing towards my ankle, and I just sat down for the rest of the game. The coach was looking at me real evilly, but I was like, I just didn't want to do it. When I was a bit younger, I used to play rugby, and I think Mum and Dad had high hopes. I got into rugby because Mum was playing rugby, and it was just so fascinating to me watching these women just go hard and go at it. And I just remember thinking, oh gosh, I want to do that because Mum does that. And did it and hated it. Hated it. I think I would cry every game. I eventually would want to get into it and enjoy it, but then by that time the coach was like, get her off. So, I mean, it was more of a chore, if anything.
So did singing and performing feel like an escape from that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, singing and performing singing and performing wasn't the chore. Singing and performing was just what I needed to do, and no one was going to tell me that I couldn't do it. And so if I had to do this one chore of playing one sport, I would do it, because I need to do what I need to do, which is performing. Yeah. And there's nothing like it. I used to, in high school, I used to want to be the lead in every show, and I wanted to be the lead of every stage challenge. Never got a chance to be the lead in any stage challenge, because in our final year, I was getting close to it, I was about to do it, and then this Belgian boy came in who could do flips, and I was cut. I was jealous, and I hated him for the rest of the year, but that's alright. I understand everything. Oh, that's my phone. Yeah. Oh no, it's just my leg cramps.
Where you are now,
Yes.
what do you think has been the most difficult part of your journey?
I think the difficulties, it's never, how do I answer this? I don't think it's ever not difficult, if I'm being honest with you. Your advocacy as a trans woman starts the second you step foot out the door. You've always got this checklists of safety, I like to call it, in my head. So every time I'm about to go to a different place, or every time I'm about to do anything or go anywhere, I have to go, is it a safe place? Am I going with safe people? Are the guests that come in going to be safe as well? Is it a safe environment? Like, I have to tick these off in my head before I can go anywhere. And if there's not many ticks on that list, usually I prefer to stay home and make up some excuse. And I know that's probably not the best way of living, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. So it's been real fortunate being in this process that we're working on, stepping out of my boundaries and going to places like these protests and things like that, because ideally I would not. I would stay away out of fear. But I'm learning in my older age of 34 to be fearless, and it's taking its time, but we're in the right direction. Difficulties for me is a big word, because I don't think they ever end, and until we can live in a peaceful world, I don't think they ever will.
What are the unsafe things that you have to navigate every day? Can you list them?
Yeah, so some of the unsafe things that I have to navigate every day is, because I'm also a woman of size as well, if I go to a place, am I going to fit into whatever I'm doing? Is there going to be a chair for me to fit into? Are there going to be people there that will potentially hurt me? Are there going to be people there that are going to potentially embarrass me? Are there people in there that are going to potentially physically harm me? Like, these are realities that we all have to deal with. And although we live in New Zealand and we are as a country of politeness, you can't just rely on that. You've got to really be cautious wherever you go, particularly in large cities like Auckland that I live in. Yeah.
And on the opposite end of that, what has been some of the best parts of your journey?
I think, well, the best part for me is I don't think I lost anybody that I loved in being true to myself. I think I just felt the love even more. And that's such a beautiful thing. I'm so proud of all of the people that I know and care about, because not many people get to experience that, but I do. And sometimes I have to ask myself, why am I so lucky to have such a strong base of people? And I think that's one of the best things that happened to me. Also, in about 2016, I quit my job. I was, for many years, I was working in admin type roles, when knowing full well that my first true love was performing, was working somewhere in the arts. And so I quit that job in 2016, and throughout that time started doing the transition phase of my life, and being told at particular times, oh, if you do transition over, your work's going to drop completely. But me having the strong stubbornness that I have from both of my parents, I was like, well, no, screw you, I'm going to do it anyway. And so I guess the happiest thing what makes me happy is that I'm in this phase now where my career is continuously moving forward, and I'm so blessed and lucky for that. And that's because I think the industry is changing and people's minds are changing, so people like me can come through, yeah.
So where do you think your past has led you to now?
My past? I think it's led me to this point by, I think many a time in my life I could have easily just given up. And I've told myself many times, you should just give up. But I think because of that, it just fueled so much more for me to be like, well, no, screw you. I'm not going to give up. I'm going to continue on and try and strive for happiness as much as I can. And so without that voice in there, which I think stems back from my ancestors, stems back from the relentlessness of us as Māori, that voice there has navigated me in paths I didn't dream I thought I'd ever be in. And so that's what drives me, and that's what I've come from.
When you said giving up, what did you mean? Like giving up the professional dreams or giving up on other things?
Yeah. Giving up. Like, there's just been some days, to be honest with you, in my 20s particularly, there were just some days where I could have just easily just sat in my room and ate until I had a heart attack and died, and I would have been fine with it. Well, not fine with it, but I just would have let it happen. And that's because at the time I always thought things were too hard, and too difficult to obtain, so why even try? And like, I remember one situation where I had what's it called? I remember one situation where I had appendicitis, and I just kind of suffered in it alone for at least a day, 2 days, just suffered in it, knowing full well that didn't matter. Whatever happens, happens. But it wasn't until I rang my mum and she was like, you need to get to the hospital now. And so I eventually went to the doctors first, who then put me in a ambulance and sent me off to hospital. It wasn't until then that I started to be proactive, but I could have easily just stayed at home. That's how. This was pre-transition as well. Like my self-care back then was probably not as it was definitely not as relevant as it is now to me. But I think, again, it's that Māori voice. And sometimes it doesn't even come from me. It has to come from somebody else, like my mum. Things like that push me to go forward. And at that time, I knew that there was no. After realizing, I was like, nothing should stop me right now, and I should push forward. And so that's why I got the help that I needed.
When we first started talking, spirited around what you're willing to talk about with regard to the transition.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about whatever you're comfortable with, where you're at with that. And I don't mean the physical necessarily, just because obviously the transition means so many things, so many different things. From your perspective, where are you at?
Where I'm at with my transition is I'm frustrated that I couldn't have done it earlier, because the idea of, like, and I know so many of us don't find being passable as a reason to be existent as a trans anything, but I would love one day to be passable, like so many of my sisters are, and I think I held it off for too long that I might have missed that boat, and that's a bit scary to me. Don't get me wrong, I think I'm stunning, but yeah, I think I just held off for too long. But at the same point, you have to make do with what you are given and with what you are doing. And so I'm transitioning, and I should congratulate myself for just doing that, because so many of us can't, so many of us haven't. So yeah, I've just got to stay positive to my own individual journey and not worry about others. But some days I look in the mirror and go, okay.
As someone who has also faced this, but is now in a place where roles have been specifically written for you that don't reinforce stereotypes about trans women in particular, how does it make you feel to know that there are still trans people out there who aren't getting work because simply who's just trans?
First and foremost, there's just not enough of us. We're starting to grow, but if you'd have asked me that question 2 years ago, it would have been because we can't find anybody. I was casting a show that I eventually took part in. I was helping out with the casting to find trans people, and we went everywhere, we looked everywhere, we went to who was on the books of the agencies, and I remember it very well. There were only 4 of us on the books. And I knew some of these girls. I was like, well, where the hell are they? And so I looked, I went back to my sisters, my friends, my very close friends that are in this industry, and I said, oi, why are you not part of this? Why do you not have an agent? And they were like, darling, they don't know how to look after us. They've never been able to know what we need as actors, and so we gave up. I can look after myself. And I just remember thinking, that's why we're so limited here in New Zealand. I'm only speaking for New Zealand, by the way. Everywhere else has their own work to do, but we have our work here on how we look after our creative trans people. And I think the idea of going in to these spaces to audition, to be cast, and all that sort of thing, they're relatively quite dangerous places, because as we've seen in many situations, people are either too fat, too trans, too unpassable, too anything, and a lot of those people are very vocal about that. And so with that knowledge, a lot of our people are like, well, screw that, I don't want to be in that sort of situation to feel that particular way about myself. And so a lot of them just decide not to show up and not to attend. But I think people like myself and the rest of my sisters that are in this industry have a responsibility to ensuring the safety of our youth, our rangatahi, of our elders, so that we can all get into this space and there be a surplus of us. And I think we've got so long to go, but we're getting there, I think. And also on top of that, we're in the rooms making the decisions. I am such a big fan. I would list all of them proudly, because I just sit with them. Ramon Tewake, Amanaki Prescott, Moelanga, JC Tanuvasa. I'm just so proud of my sisters, because we're all working hard to ensure that this industry is easier for everybody else, and that's such a beautiful place to be in. Which is what breaks my heart with Lexi, was that her experience had to be different. But she was in an era where people just did not know at all any dialogue. I think our right to exist is a lot more palatable to people now and understandable, so we can do what we're doing. And my heart breaks for her that her career had to dry up, but like any resilient trans person, she did the best of her ability to maintain a level head. And look at her now, she's just one of my favourite people.
And then on the flip side of that, how does it feel to be able to play a leading lady role in a play?
Say what? I remember that process. I remember it very well. I was doing a show in Christchurch called The Little Shop of Horrors, playing the big carnivorous plant in the formation of a big, beautiful woman. And the director, Hayden T, had come to see that show. And not knowing at all, I knew who he was. He's quite an accomplished actor and director now. But we met, we had some drinks after the show, and that was that. And then maybe a couple of weeks later, he messaged me going, hey, I'm doing a show in Australia called Jekyll and Hyde, and I really would love it if you could come in and audition for the role of Lucy. And I knew that show, because I went to performing arts school. Every girl and their cat sang one of those songs from that show, so I knew that show very well. And when he said the role of Lucy, who was one of the leading ladies of the show, I went, no, I'm not doing that. You're crazy. How am I going to sing that? And he went, well, no, I think you should consider it. I think have a look into this and we'll go from there. And so from once that conversation happened, it kind of started to grow on me, and I was starting to listen to the songs thinking, okay, I think I can do this. Until it came to the audition time where I met up with him, and yeah, it was all uphill from there. That audition, I aced. I'm a very good auditioner, but I aced that audition, and proudly I aced that audition, and got the role, got accepted into the role maybe a week later, and lived my greatest dream. It's not a dream that most people get to share, but it's fitting on me. Yeah.
When you spoke with Sarah, you talked about how trans people, they end up becoming advocates and activists, whether they want to or not. So do you feel that you're an activist because it was placed upon you? Or was that something that ended up coming more naturally to you?
Well, like I said, you're an activist the second you walk out the door. There's no stopping. There's no stopping the stares that you get, or the side eyes, or the like. There's no stopping it, and so you either decide on the front doorstep, am I going to cower to this, or am I going to stand up and face it? And so we stand up and face it. Advocacy is so important because it tells the ones that are too scared to step out their door that there's somebody that is doing it and there's somebody there for you, I think. And that's a beautiful thing for our people that are too scared. I am one of those people that can be too scared, but like I said, that little voice in me goes, no, you're going to do it. And I do it proudly with my head high. Yeah. Yeah. Is there any more to that question?
You're welcome to.
Oh, no, I just was like, did I answer that all right? Okay. Okay.
So when you spoke with Gemma, you got pretty emotional when she spoke about the advocacy she did with the women in prison.
Yeah.
Can I ask you why you felt emotional when she spoke about that?
I think because of her experiences, her want and desire to make it easier for the next girls who are also in those same instances, just overwhelmed me, I guess, because for anyone, prison is quite a high angst place to be, and sometimes a hopeless place to be. And so I see a lot of the people that come out of there are hopeful, but they're in the system now, and so it becomes quite a hopeless state of living and a state of being. But Gemma just did not let that deter her, and she was very humble about all of it. But when you get down to the crux of it, she helped so many of those women in ways that she probably will never know. And the idea that she's helping those people when nobody was there to help her in her situation, I just couldn't handle it. I just thought, this is a woman with such amazing mana and heart, and I wept for her. I wept for the younger version of her who had to suffer alone.
So going off the idea of having a trans woman helping another trans woman get something good in their life, when we interviewed Rion, he spoke about how he thinks it's very important that trans people are making decisions for trans people because they have that lived experience, obviously. How important do you think that is, and do you think that I know you spoke about it in the performance aspect, but outside of that, do you think you're seeing it more?
My Rion, he was wonderful. I think it's so necessary because I think the dialogue can be shared and understood. And so from that dialogue, you can really pick and point out exactly what any trans person needs, well, any specific trans person needs. And so, I completely agree with that sentiment because only your community knows what's right for you. You can understand, as a trans person, you can understand a trans person's requests and needs a lot better than anybody else because you know what the dialogue is. And if you don't know the dialogue, it's easy to know it because we all kind of experience the same experiences when it comes to transitioning and things like that. And so, I mean, who better than need to have somebody on your team that has gone through it and knows it exactly, yeah.
And continuing on again about trans people, speaking for trans people, when you have someone like Cozy Parker who's speaking over trans people, it creates obviously a very dangerous situation, which encouraged the counter-protest. So can you paint a picture of what it was like to be there on that day? How did you feel? What was going through your head?
I remember I was in attendance, yes. I kind of just watched it unravel. I didn't really feel like I wanted to scream anything or yell anything. I kind of just wanted to watch and see what had happened, to see if I would even see her, which I didn't. And I kind of made my way around the rotunda and everywhere. I was getting support everywhere. People were checking on me to see if I was okay, so I felt safe. But I remember thinking, I wonder how she feels right now. She probably feels really unsafe. And all I could think was, you put yourself in that situation by coming to a place and telling trans people how to live their lives. But also on top of that, your message was trying to then, wasn't just trans people, it was Indigenous trans people. And I'm an Indigenous trans woman. And so for you to tell me that my existence and my own culture is wrong made me think, you cannot tell me that because I am from a long line of Indigenous trans people, and we know our place on the marae, we know our places, so for you to come in and try and deny that, it was, I couldn't get my head around it, but I decided not to protest. I just decided to be present with my community and mostly just watch, and that's what I did. Do I think she deserve to get tomato juice on her? No. I'd heard tell that there were some trans Māori women that really wanted to hear what she said, and it's sad that they weren't able to. And also I just remember thinking afterwards when the protest was done and I left to go home, just this feeling of sadness, because as much as I love our allies, they protect us and they look after us and they are strong voices for us. I completely understand that. But once the allies are gone and everything disperses, what's left? And all I just felt was just this deep sorrow for the trauma that so many of us girls are probably feeling at this very moment. Although it was a loving protest, it was a loving situation for a lot of us, and everybody felt really happy. There were a few of us that had just sadness, because also you've got to think, well, she didn't get to speak. What happens now? Have we just made things worse for us? Have we made a more dangerous society? Like, all those things kind of played into my head, and I thought, gosh, I can't be the only one that's feeling like this. And so I did this post on Facebook talking about that sort of thing, and just a lot of my sisters were like, yeah, we're in the same boat. I couldn't even bring myself to come to this event. And so, yeah, as much as we had supported our trans people, we really need to listen to them now, and listen to us now, and hold us, hopefully. And I think that's being done, yeah.
And I definitely think people like Fuzzy Parker, they encourage spaces that aren't safe and policies that aren't safe for trans people. And when we spoke to Felicia, she talked about how you end up becoming immune to your own well-being and your own happiness. So do you think that all trans people are faced with the exhaustion of always having to fight for their human rights? And do you feel this exhaustion?
I'm exhausted every day. Like I said, when you go through your safety checklist, that becomes training. I feel like she hit it right on the head. I think we have been a target for so many years. Shut up.
Brady, could you just... oh no, you're good, sorry. Yeah, you're good. Just if you could stop it again, say Felicia hit it on the head.
Yeah. Auntie Felicia hit it on the head with exactly what she said. I think we've been targets for years. More than years, it's decades we've been targets. And any specific type of way, and so you just get exhausted. I can completely relate to that, because I find a lot of what has been said about us exhausting. I've resorted to deleting Twitter because I just don't want to read it anymore. Like, I'm never exhausted to fight if I have to, or stand in protest. That's my legal right to be able to do that. But gosh, your wider work can just exhaust itself. And I think, like she said, you just become numb to the jabs that happen, and that's such a possible thing because it's constantly happening. Yeah, I agree.
And how do you take care of yourself?
I delete Twitter. Jeez, Twitter is just a cesspool of nasty evilness. It's not what I do, but I think it's something that I'm going to start doing now, which is I think I just need to go home and be with mum and dad, and just enjoy my time with them and cut myself off from the world for a little bit. I think I need that. I think my wider world's a bit exhausted, and so I know when I go back to them, my cup will be full again. Otherwise I just switch off from the world, spend time with my little cat, who's such a brat, but we love him. I think those are the spaces. Also, I think another great way to do to look after yourself is to write it down. Get it out of you and chuck it away. That's another great vessel in order to stop it from sitting inside you.
And the idea of trans, we found, has been very different for each individual depending on the generation they've grown up in. And when we interviewed Chanel, they said that a trans person is someone who just tells them that they are trans, that's enough for them. So who is trans to you?
Well, we have a history of trans people fighting for the right to be able to transition, and a lot of the fighting that they did was about realigning your body into the gender that you affirm. And who am I to tell them that that's not the way things are anymore? I completely think, but also on that same token, I think we can live cohesively together and potentially understand each other. I don't think, I'm kind of in the same boat of being like, if you tell me you're trans, then you are trans. Who am I to then question you about that? That's your own individual journey that you're going through. And also, I think people are making it out like this is such an easy thing to do, just to say I'm trans now. No. Like, from my own experience, you sit in that questioning it for so long and then once you come up to that decision, it's not just a snap judgment, it's years of questioning and ensuring that you are that thing or that person. It's not just an easy choice for anybody.
How hard is it to be trans? Like, there's so many attacks on trans people, and the thing about like going into women's bathrooms and all that bullshit. Like, it would be really useful for you to explain. It's such a hard journey. I know you said some of that, but I think spelling it out is really useful.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't want my stats to look out of place. I think it's hard being trans because just existing can piss people off, I think, and I'm not really into the type of caring what people think, but when you've got more than like one person saying it on a constant, anywhere, everywhere, it gets hurtful, and you do become numb to it, but at the same token, like, numbness comes from the hurt that you're always constantly feeling. So it's hard to be trans because no one makes this decision lightly. It's just not. This idea that we're just going, okay, I'm trans now, la la la, like, who cares? Like, that sort of stuff. Like, I don't think anybody's feeling that way, and so. Also, I think it's hard to be trans is because a lot of people have different ideas on what they think. Non-trans people have different ideas on what they think we are. And so when one person does something like shoot up a school, they think that we're all going to shoot up a school. Like, that's not how that is. I feel, although we all go through the same situation, every story, every idea is completely separate and individual. And to lump us all together into one group of being disservices us completely, because then you go and meet people that aren't sure about us, and they go, like, a few people have gone to me, you know what, I like you because you're just a normal human being. I'm like, we all are. Like the inexactitudes of the information that people receive is hard, because you're always feeling like you have to educate people, and some days I just can't be fucked. Yeah. Can you put that in? Thank you.
I'm gonna move on to asking about your big day out performance.
Oh yeah.
So, what did it mean to you to be up on that stage? I didn't realise until I actually got up on that stage how much of a big honour it is. When you work in this industry, just a gig becomes another gig, becomes another gig, becomes another gig. But being on that stage, seeing all of our people in front of me,
singing songs that are crazy and just having so much fun and living my best life. It was such a rewarding experience, and so many people have sung on that stage, have performed on that stage, and so at that very moment I realized this is such a great honor to be a part of a legacy of people, and I was looked after so well there. I don't think I ever got nervous. And normally I thrive on nerves because it allows me to do better work, but I don't think I was ever nervous because I just was with whānau. I was just surrounded in so much love, and yeah, I wish I could do it again and again and again and again. People need to hire my band, the Brady Bunch. We are open hearts, open minded, and open legged. Put that in.
So at Big Gay Out, there were all those politicians who stood on the stage in support of the queer and trans community, but again, a few weeks later, they were encouraging Posey Parker being let into the country. What do you think about that?
Most of them can get fucked. No.
Brady, if you could just include like politicians, like the politicians.
Oh, I thought you were... Okay. No, well then I'm not going to say that because I don't know. I don't know who was there because I wasn't there.
Tell the politicians to get fucked. Just, but your view on. Did you think the politicians who were at the Big Gay Out, were they sincere and are they doing anything for them?
I was about to.
Sorry.
You cut me off. Okay.
Sorry. Just got do you have a strand of hair?
Where?
Yeah, good. That's good. Yep.
Is this better? Sorry, just make sure my boobs are in the right spot. For a few of them, I think it was just a plea to get votes for next year, because they showed their true colours on what. Oh, no, sorry, I want to say this better. I think it was a ploy to get votes for next year, for most of them. But when it came down to hearing the voices of what we had to say, they were silent, or some of them went against us. So it's like, you just showed your ass, really. Like, why should we have any faith in you? And if it had happened the other way around, like, everybody would have probably booed them, and deservedly so. But it just gives me it gives me a clear indication of who I'm going to vote for anyway, but it gives me a clear indication of what work will be done to ensure the safety of us. And for most of them, I don't think much of that matters, just as long as they can get us on board, which I highly doubt will happen. Did I answer that all right? See, I was going to answer it. I had it in me somewhere. What else? Okay. I don't know politically. I don't know how to answer with political questions. I can only speak to what I felt in the moment. Yeah.
So can you explain to us why you felt depressed after the protest?
Well, I think for many of us, myself included, thinking this is not over. Something in my mind went, yes, we won the battle. I don't think we've won the war yet. And And I think the war is different on either side. I think our war is we just want to be left alone and we want to live in peace. That's it. We just want to live our lives. And so, but for the other side, I don't want to speak on behalf of them, but it feels like they want to remove that completely, remove us from being able to live peacefully. And so it made me sad to think that, gosh, there's so much more fighting to do. And the fact that we're still having to make these sort of fights happen still in this current climate, it's exhausting and it's tiring. Yeah.
So where do you feel the struggle is for trans people? Where do you feel it's going?
Where do I feel it's going? Well, our very existence has been put into play now. And so that can go either one or two ways. We are completely removed from society, or we are able to live authentically and happily. And whenever anyone's existence is being questioned or at play like that, brings so much discourse and so much anger and so much fear. And not just in your community, but it ripples to everywhere and to everyone. And so all of us are affected in some way, and some of us act out on how we're affected on all sides. And so it just creates this unwanted tension in society that we have always had, but I fear not as potent as it is now. Now that there have been lines drawn. Yeah.
Yes. When you started this journey, what did you think you would learn, and what have you learned?
This journey of TransGenerations. I've learnt that our voices are all different. We all come from varying perspectives. I've learnt so much about myself and my advocacy and my inner strength. I've learnt that there's a whānau wherever I look. I've just got to really look. And yeah, getting to know these people has been so valuable because they all bring value to their communities and in very specific ways, in their own ways. And so to share some of that value and to receive it is it's just an amazing feeling. There's so much to do and so much work to go, but I feel like with the people that we've spoken to, we're getting closer and closer to happiness.
So you have a very special, I think a very warm relationship with your parents, from my perspective at least. So I don't think from some of the trans people we've spoken to, some of them don't get to have that with their parents. So how important is it for you to maintain this relationship?
I'm going to be honest and say, although we love each other unconditionally, it's not always been the easy road. I, as a child, as a human being, can be quite selfish, and I take things out on my mum and dad that I probably shouldn't have in the past. So to be in a place of love and respect for each other is such a wonderful thing, and it's always about just continuing to love on each other, and I think that's the phase we're at now. I lead my life with the kaupapa that anything that I do or everything that I do is to make them proud. And if I'm doing something and I know that they will question, then I just won't do it. But as long as I make them proud, that's all that matters.
And do you see a continued effort made by your parents to be supportive of you all the time?
Yeah. I want to be in Timaru a lot more. I think what I learned through this journey is that Timaru is not... Where's her go from?
We were talking about what you learned from visiting.
Yeah. I know that I want to be in Timaru a lot more. Timaru is such a beautiful place with amazing people that are warm and feel like home to me, and my parents are at the very top of that list. And so I'm going to make it a point to be with them a lot more. It didn't dawn on me that my parents are getting older. Isn't that strange? You never want your parents to get older. You kind of want to always live in this bubble of being young and being their child forever. And so I want to make the most of the rest of our lives together. Because I love them so much, and I love them so much because they love me. They love me fiercely and unconditionally, and it's such a blessing to have that sort of relationship in your life. And they're the only people that I can give that glint, that glint in their eyes. And so I need to honour that, and I need to hold on to that for all time. We've got so much more time together, but the idea that time keeps taking things away and everything gets shorter and shorter is a bit scary to me, so I just want to be with them as much as I can. Okay.
What do you hope for your relationship between yourself and your parents?
That we continue to get to know each other in this adult phase, and that we continue to have so many more beautiful memories. That's what I want. And that's what we need.
Sorry, Tabitha, carry on.
How did it feel for you to be on the stage speaking to the students?
Weird. It was so weird. I haven't been back to that school since I graduated. Once I finished that school and moved on to performing arts school, I never looked back. I was like, goodbye tomorrow, I'm off to pursue my dream and be a superstar. And so to come back to the school and speak to the students was it was weird, but it was a full circle moment. And it's wonderful to see the kids eager and willing to learn, and that identity is not this heavy topic, but also it's not something to be ridiculed or made fun of. All of the questions that they asked were specific, all of the questions that they asked were of interest, and I never felt like anybody was coming for me at all. Had it been 20 years ago when I was at high school, a completely different story. So the development of minds and the young minds and how they are working and how they are more open to people is a wonderful thing.
And going back to you being in school, so what were your hopes for yourself in high school, and have they translated into where you are now?
My hopes for me in high school were to get out of high school and get into adulthood, which is very interesting because now, wanting to go back to Timaru, I want to ditch adulthood and go back to being a child again. But I guess, my hopes were that I was able to be successful. I don't think I'm successful. I think I'm just blessed. So I don't think I'm achieving my hopes, but I think I've found something better, in my own opinion, and that is blessed. Yeah.
And I know you spoke about this a little bit earlier, where you spoke about you did admin jobs after you left NASDA.
Yeah.
But I was kind of curious as to what made you want to go back to performing arts.
Well, when I did performing arts school, so I went to the National Academy of Singing and Dramatic Art in Christchurch, and through those 3 years, so I went to my tertiary study was at the So my tertiary study were at the National Academy of Singing and Dramatic Art in Christchurch, and my experiences there, although I learnt a lot, I think I was firstly too young to really hone in my skills, and secondly, back then, and in that performing arts space, in that education space, it was such a binary space, and so you were either one or the other, and I think there was no exploration of anything other than what you should be playing by how you present. And I just remember thinking, that sucks. And also the horror stories that we would be told. So things like, oh, you can't do that. You can't look this way and breathe on the left because you'll be kicked out of the industry. Like, not that, but just everything that you did, if you blinked an eyelash or something like that, you could potentially be kicked out and blacklisted in this industry. And I went, well, screw this industry. I don't want to be a part of a bunch of assholes. And so I decided very quickly after graduating that I wanted to work. And so I went straight into doing, I worked for the press newspaper for a wonderful woman named Sharon, and we would literally just laugh every night. She still works there, and I just completely adore her. But I got into making money, and I thought that's what I wanted to do. And it was about 2013 where I started doing, there was, in that period, the Christchurch earthquakes happened, and so I experienced the big ones and went, I cannot live in a place where I potentially could die tomorrow. So I packed myself up and moved to Auckland, and it wasn't until I got to Auckland where I started doing amateur work, and on top of doing admin type work. And I just remember thinking, the more and more I got into doing theatre and things like that, the more angry I got at work. And I was like, why can I not just let the two coexist? And it just came down to the fact that I was just not supposed to be doing that job. And so in 2016, I quit my job at IAG, much to my boss's dismay, who hated me for 2 weeks that I had left. After that, her problem, not mine. I quickly moved on into doing professional work and never looked back. I always say I'm the poorest I've ever been, but I'm the happiest I've ever been. And nothing can stop happiness, even if it's poor. Yeah.
So we'll just move on to the last set of questions.
Nah, we're done. What do you want?
Are you proud of yourself and everything you've accomplished so far?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, I think I am proud of myself. I could have had a life of zero fulfillment if I hadn't made the choices that I made to get to this point. And so I don't regret anything. Yeah. I love myself, and I love my work, and I love everyone. Actually, no, I take that back. Not everyone.
And how would you summarize your generation in comparison to the older generations?
I think my generation is the bridge between this new generation and the older generation, and so we are the ones that are receiving both information very well and understand where it comes from both sides. So we can respect the ones that put in the hard yards, but we can also push through these new ones as well. And I think that's a beautiful generation, a fortunate generation to be in.
And how does it feel to know that you have people like Lexi, Gemma, Felicia, Sarah, Brian and Chanel in your community that are always working hard to pave the way for the next generation to come?
It means that we are a step closer to happiness and peace, and I am all about happiness and peace. So may they continue to do the beautiful work that they do.
And what do you hope for the future of trans people?
Happiness and peace. A chance to just exist and that be okay with people. That's what I hope.
What advice do you have for younger people who are embarking on the same journey as yours? How would you tell them to navigate it, and where should they look for safe spaces and how?
Be brave. Ask for what you want, because sometimes you will receive it. Know what you're getting into, and strive for happiness. Sometimes it doesn't work, sometimes you can't, but if you continue to strive, that voice inside you will tell you where to go.
Was there anything else you wanted to add?
This has been a nightmare. No, I'm good.